Hi, good evening, everyone. Good to see you again on another PMI Chapter UAE webinar. So, as it's a working day, so most of the people will be joining in a while. So, we'll take more of 5 minutes to have other attendees joining us, and then we can start the webinars. So, we have around 60 to 72 people have joined, 74, 79. More people are joining us. So, we welcome you all once again to this UAE Chapter webinar. Welcome Ala, welcome Arnab, welcome Renold, welcome Kasun, welcome Adil, welcome Fadi. In the meanwhile, you can share your LinkedIn IDs for networking so you have a chance to know each other. And please let us know from which region you're joining from. Welcome Amit. So we have people joining from Abu Dhabi. We have from Greece. Welcome Rizwan, Dubai, Qatar. We have people joining from Canada also. So till now we have 144 attendees. It's good. Welcome Moses from USA. So we'll take more of 2 minutes and we'll start the webinar. So thanks for joining. It's good to see that today till now we have 163 attendees. It's a good number. So let's have more people joining us and we'll start. So before starting the webinar, brief about the webinar. We have this webinar for 1 hour 15 minutes, where we have our respected speaker who will be sharing her knowledge on this topic called the power of project leadership, and there'll be Q&A questions also. You can post your questions in the Q&A section. There's a chat also where you can post your LinkedIn IDs and you can introduce yourself. So taking one more minute, we have till now 172 attendees. So let's start. As we have people from different time zones. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We welcome you to another chapter, PMI chapter UA webinar, and we are excited to have you joining us today. I know people are from Canada also, I can see. So you must be taking the time from your busy schedule and you must be at job. So today we'll be exploring a topic, the power of project leadership. My name is Ankur Arora, and I'm the host for today's session, along with my colleague Amir Joyce. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to express my thanks to our distinguished speaker and each one of you for joining us today. This webinar will have make you eligible for two PDUs. To claim that PDU, make sure that you have registered for this webinar with your PMI registered email ID. We encourage you to actively engage throughout the session, whether it's asking questions, you can post them in Q&A section, and giving your thoughts and suggestions in the chat box. Your inputs are valuable for us. Also, before we start, I told you about the chat box. Let's go through a presentation which will tell you about a chapter. So PMI chapter, we are part of PMI UA chapter. PMI was founded in 1969 by a group of working project managers, and even after 50 years later, PMI is now the source and resource for all things in project management. We are one of the largest professional association in the world. We sponsor and publish research, thoughts, leadership, and knowledge content. We also offer trainings, accreditations, and we are a big community. We issue a globally recognized standards and credentials. Our chapter vision: empower and influence individuals with the innovative project economy principles to turn ideas into reality. Our mission is to disrupt and create value driven opportunities to our chapter members and partners to become agile, innovative, productive in the platform for the growth of project economy. We are totally run by the volunteers who are a part of this chapter, and we have around more than 4,000 plus active chapter members. We are ranked as a top fifth chapter in the PMI EMA region. We focus on the top leading industries and trends. We are serving in the US UAE aspiring community of project managers, PMI certified holders, and project and program professionals that are seeking the project management capabilities and offering and believing in the importance of our profession. We are totally dependent on you in order to make our chapter activities as interactive, as invigorating as possible. As we have the AGM on 27th, whosoever has joined, thank you for joining for the AGM. And it was a successful event just because of our volunteers. Our chapter board, led by Mr. Adil Sultan, supported by other directors from different governance, marketing, community engagement, events, volunteers, finance, and membership team. Our PMI membership benefit: you get an access to PMI library of standards and PMBOK guide. You also get a certification discount. You get access to PMI standard, PMI picks, and career navigators. You also get an access to projectmanagement.com community. And our live events are mostly for the event members, so you get a chance to join those events. Also, you get access to tools and template publication and reports, etc. So we have four pillars. One is networking, learning and edge sharing, career growth, and events. These webinars are the part of the event. So we have another new additions. We have Member Corner, where you can share your contribution, share and elevate the discourse of project management related topics. Also, we have Member Spotlight. You can join our PMI channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, then YouTube, and then our community of WhatsApp community. So you can also send your inquiries at membership, volunteering, and these email IDs for any query. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll welcome our distinguished speaker, Susanne. And a brief about Susanne. Susanne is globally recognized executive coach, leadership trainer, and specializing in transformational leadership for project and change manager. She has more than 30 years experience, and she has worked with major organizations like JP Morgan, Citigroup, Lego, Philips, and NXP. She's founder of Susan Madsen International Limited and a co-founder of Project Leadership Institute. Her approach emphasizes self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and personal growth as essential component of effective leadership. She has accredited corporate and executive coach, NLP practitioner, and a DISC certified professional. She has been an author for several books, which has include an award-winning The Power of Project Leadership. In fact, which won the PMI UK National Award in 2019. She has another book, Project Manager Coaching Workbook, and there's one book, How to Do the Inner Work, which was praised by Tara Brach, who is a psychologist, a US psychologist. So she frequently contributes to publication like Project Journal and manage magazines and serves as a guest lecturer at the institutions such as University of Westminster. So without taking much time, we'll welcome Susan to join and take the session further.
Thank you so much. And I would like to welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time out to come and spend your evening with us or your morning with us or your lunchtime with us. I am really honored. My goal is to give you as much knowledge and insight as possible in this next hour and a bit. There will be questions at the end. So please do submit your questions and we will get to as many questions as possible. So my big topic is really how to move from being a project manager to a project leader. And the power of project leadership is the title of my book also. This is the second edition. And yes, it did win the PMI's award, actually. And I will be sharing insights from the book and from, well, several of my books, actually. But as I said, I'll make it practical so that you can walk away with specific tips and tools that you can use straight away. And I want to start by asking the question, why are we here? Why do you show up today? And why do we still struggle as a industry, the project management industry? We still struggle because we have more and more people taking certifications, taking exam, learning about project management, which is a good thing. But we still have failure statistics, which are not where we want them to be. And these failure statistics haven't changed that much. When I wrote the first edition of this book over 10 years ago, the failure statistics were fairly similar. And here I have just chosen to show you two of them. So 40% of strategic initiatives fail. This is from the PMI. It's from PMI's Pulse report. They also say that 48% of projects are not delivered on time. If you are not familiar with PMI's Pulse report, I do recommend you look them up. So every year, the PMI will do many big surveys and they do different in-depth reports on the profession of project management. And there's a lot of good insight that you can learn from the Pulse report. It means like they take the pulse, yeah, of what is happening in the profession. So I still ask the question, why do we still struggle? Why are these failure statistics not changing massively in light of all the new training we do and all the learning that we acquire? And I want to offer an answer. It may not be the complete answer, but I think it's a key answer. And from my point of view, it is because complexity is rising faster than what we can learn. What does complexity mean? It means that more projects have more stakeholders around the world. We work in teams that are remote, different parts, different time zones, different cultures. And if one thing makes projects more complex, it is people. We also have technology that changes faster and faster. We have increased competition. We have all these factors means that everything is more complex when we execute projects. It also means that one person, the project manager, cannot have all the answers anymore because the world is too complex for one project manager to have all the answers and instruct everybody else on how to work and how to deliver the project. So my message here is, because of the increased complexity, we need to move from project management to project leadership, because we need to shift the burden of thinking from one project manager to the entire team. We need to empower everybody in the project to make decisions and to work optimally, to be accountable, etc. It's actually what a high-performing team is. Now, when I wrote the first edition of my book, The Power of Project Leadership, about 10 years ago, I was one of the first ones to really go on about how project managers need leadership. And I'm very pleased that today I am not the only one anymore. For instance, we have here McKinsey & Company. They published this report some years ago. It's called The Art of Project Leadership, Delivering the World's Largest Projects. You can Google this report, you can download it and read for yourself what they say. what I noticed in particular was that they distinguish between the art of project leadership and the science of project management. And you can see here that what McKinsey is saying is that the science of project management is the gray part. Every project needs that. Irrespective of size and complexity, we all need the science of project management. We need systems, we need processes. And the art of project leadership, which is here, you can see that in blue, we need relatively more of that as the project size and complexity increases. So now with increased complexity, we need more and more leadership. Here they say it's about mindsets. And on the next page, you can see a bit more about what McKinsey means by this blue part. It's leadership, collaboration, trust, mindset, ownership, coaching. That is the missing piece. And I completely agree. When we train in project management, when we take certifications, we mostly train in the gray part, the processes, the planning, the risk, the cost, the schedule. And yes, we need that, but it is not enough. That is my message. It is not enough. And just to bring you up to speed with different types of terminology, the PMI, you may sometimes hear them refer to this leadership piece, the missing piece, as power skills. So we have different names for different things, but essentially we're talking about these softer aspects of leadership. Just to be absolutely clear, I want to distinguish between management and leadership. This is my way of doing it. McKinsey talks about the science of management, the art of project leadership. PMI may call it soft skills or power skills. Here I want to break down a little bit further what we mean, or what I mean, by management, the science of management. When you operate purely from management, you are very task-oriented. You are a good project manager. You want to do the right things. You'd want to do things right, rather. You can be quite transactional, meaning that you give a team member a task and you expect them to complete that task. Because after all, they get a salary, don't they? So management can be thought of as being quite process-oriented. It's about what we do. It's about the events. And as I said before, you may be good at telling people what to do, at instructing them, because maybe you feel you need to know it all and you need to instruct your team in what to do. There's nothing wrong with that. We need management. We need management to calculate project effort, to do the planning and to do the risk management. Absolutely. But as I said a moment ago, it is not enough. We need to combine this very rational cognitive intelligence with leadership. It's when you combine both of these circles, both of these capabilities, that you get the best project leaders. As I say, you need to manage tasks and lead people. That's why we need both capabilities. Now, leadership isn't just about what you know. It is about how you do things. It is not just about doing things right. It's about doing the right things. It is much more about mindset and behavior. It's about how you inspire your team. And if you ask me about one of the biggest differences between management and leadership, I would say that it is emotional intelligence. You can think for yourself of some of the biggest leaders you have come across in your time, in your work experience. I bet you they had good emotional intelligence. They were able to connect with people. They were able to inspire and motivate people. So that's what we want more of, and that's what this webinar is about. So what is emotional intelligence? Well, I'm not going to do a deep dive on it, but I will encourage you to study emotional intelligence and to study these 4 pillars in particular. Self-awareness is about noticing how you feel. You can increase your self-awareness by journaling, asking for feedback, etc. Then there is self-management. That means that you need to not just burst out what you think all the time, not just to show your anger, or not just to suppress your emotions, but to know what is the moment to show your emotion, what's the moment not to show your emotion. What's your moment to assert yourself? What's the moment to hold back? This is a big, big part of leadership. Then we have the social awareness and relationship management. So the first two pillars are about you and your relationship to yourself. The last two pillars in the light blue is more about how you relate to others. And as I said, I'm not going to do a deep dive on emotional intelligence in this webinar, but I have a whole other webinar, all for free, recorded on YouTube. You can see it here, Emotional Intelligence for Project Leaders. You can go and watch. But if I were to give you some tips right now that you can take with you to practice and increase your own emotional intelligence, it is begin to pause in your work and just notice, how am I feeling right now? Am I being annoyed at my stakeholder? Do I feel angry because I have to work late? Or what is going on emotionally inside of me? Because if you can notice your own emotions better, I can guarantee you that it will be much easier for you to notice what is going on for your team members. So this other part of emotional intelligence, where you notice other people more, it's about empathizing with others, listening to others, taking an interest in others, being curious about what other people are feeling, what they're thinking. So begin to pay more attention to other people. When you're very busy running your project and delivering, sometimes we get very task oriented and we don't really have time to really look up and connect and notice other people. But I encourage you to do that to increase your emotional intelligence and to manage your emotions. Sometimes what we say, count to 10. Just notice, don't be impatient. So before you react, before you just, say something that you later regret, before you send an angry email, just pause and think about how you want to respond. So that was a quick dive on emotional intelligence, but I want to share with you also my own journey and why I'm so interested in leadership. And I want to take you back to 2008. At the time, and I live in London, and I've lived in London for 25 years, and this is a picture of the city of London here. And I was working in one of these tall buildings. I was running the biggest project for the bank where I was working. And I felt exhausted. I felt I needed to know it all and do it all. And I was really trying to work hard to deliver this very critical project. And it happened in 2008 that I was invited to go to a leadership program. And I spent a whole week learning about leadership. And during that week, I was coached for the first time, one-on-one coaching. And I don't know if any of you have had the experience of being coached, but for me, it was incredibly powerful. I had two aha moments during my first ever coaching session. Because I came to the coaching session saying, help, I'm exhausted. What shall I do? And this other person who was coaching me, really, by asking me open questions, I realized that I had the answers inside of myself. I realized that if I was exhausted and if I overworked myself, I could change my level of thinking. I could change my limiting beliefs, and I would change my behavior. So in other words, if I decided to go home at 5 p.m., I could go home at 5 p.m. Nobody was telling me to work this hard. Nobody was telling me to exhaust myself. So my first aha moment was that project managers need leadership. And the second aha moment was the power of coaching, because it had such a profound effect on myself. That propelled me to write my first book, the Project Management Coaching Workbook, and I began to coach people with whom I was working. I spent the first 5 years after I qualified as a coach, 4 or 5 years, coaching my fellow project managers before I became independent leadership coach. And when I began to coach project managers, I very quickly found that there were 3 common mistakes that I see many project managers make. Not everybody, but many. Let's see if you can recognize some of them. The first mistake is that we manage tasks at the expense of leading people. As I said before, we get very task-oriented. When we're busy, we look down and we just firefight. And we often forget to really bring people with us, to connect, to solve problems together, to take a step back and look at things. We just become very task-oriented. And the other mistake that I see most people make is that we are so focused on the urgent rather than the important. In other words, we firefight. We come into work, we look at what are our emails, what do I need to do now, which fire do I need to put out? But what's the consequence? The consequence is that we're not very good at taking time to be strategic, to work on the business case, to really spend time with our key clients, with our key stakeholders, spend time building a high-performing team, because that's not so urgent, but it is important. And the third mistake I see is that we believe we have to know it all and do it all. And I call this the superhero mentality. The superhero comes flying in, saving the day, sorting everything out on the project, telling everybody what to do, feeling that I have to prove myself, feeling it's my role to plan everything on my own and to tell people what to do. Maybe not that badly, but many project managers feel that they have to be this person who flies in and resolves everything, the person who is the safe pair of hands. And many of us want to be the superhero because, well, there are some advantages and we get applauded and we feel that we need it. We feel that we're doing a good piece of work when we are the hero, but honestly, it is not sustainable. Some of the advantages of having this heroic, pace-setting leadership style is that we get things done. And yes, we are in control when we work in this way and we work at high pace. And sometimes it is favored by senior management. Not always, but I have seen a lot of managers who liked this type of leadership or this type of super management because they can go to the project manager is control, and the project manager has all the answers. And you may think, yes, of course, that's my role. But I would challenge you on that one. Because the disadvantages is that the more you become the superhero, the less space there is for the team, the more you disempower the team. Actually, I think the role of leadership is to empower the team, not to disempower the team. The more you want to hear your own voice, the less space there is for innovative thinking from your team members. And you become more and more like a bottleneck, and it becomes more difficult for you to step away because there is such a high dependence on you. And the real issue is that it leads to burnout. And I have coached many people through burnout. And I have, again, if you have that problem, if you feel you identify with that, I have several webinars on how to avoid stress and burnout. And my most recent book, How to Do the Inner Work, may also be very relevant for you if that's your case. Now, we have to drop the superhero mentality, and I'm going to show you another way. Let's go from management to leadership. So here on the left-hand side, you see some of the things that a hero project manager might say and do. They sometimes struggle to say no. They struggle to set boundaries because they feel they have to do it all. They often micromanage the detail. They are personally involved in driving results. And then we have the firefighting, and they become a bottleneck in decision-making. So what's the alternative? Well, we need to encourage autonomy, need to delegate. That's really the key here, is to delegate. Give people the ability to run with things, give people the ability to be accountable. We need to work proactively instead of firefighting. We need to coach people. Instead of telling them what to do, we really need to start coaching and asking more questions. And I have specific suggestions to questions you can ask a little later on. And then we need to promote work-life balance instead of exploiting the team, instead of feeling that everybody has to work harder and harder and work all weekends and late evenings. We really have to create realistic project planning that makes it sustainable for people to work normal hours. So I also want to touch upon how we build high-performing teams, because when we understand the root of high-performing teams, we understand how, as a leader, we need to show up. The hero project manager is not good at building high-performing teams. So I want to share some research from Google. Google have many teams, and they set up this project called Project Aristotle to study why some of Google's teams were high-performing and why some of their teams were not high-performing. And they studied all kinds of parameters. Is it the teams that get higher salary that perform best? No. Is it the teams who have a higher level of skill who perform best? No. Is it the teams that socialize outside of work that perform best? No. So Google didn't find a correlation between all of the parameters they studied and high-performing teams. But they found something else. They found that with the naked eye, by observing the team dynamic, they could see which team was high-performing and which team was not high-performing. So you see here an illustration of some team members. We have one team leader, let's say, and 5 team members. And sometimes the communication patterns in a team will be such that everybody communicates with the team leader, and some of the team members communicate with each other. Some team members don't communicate with each other. Now, what Google found was that this can never be a high-performing team. The definition of a high-performing team is that everybody communicates with everybody in roughly equal amounts. So when Google looked at the dynamic, the communication patterns of their different teams, they found that in high-performing teams, I'll say this again, every team member, including the project manager, communicated in roughly equal amounts. So what that means is that the extroverts are contributing and making decisions and speaking in roughly equal amounts to the extroverts. The introverts and extroverts feel equally comfortable. How can we achieve that? That was the next question that Google asked. If we want everybody in the team to contribute, meaning that each engine, each team member is optimized in a sense, how do we get that? And this is where they found that it's all about psychological safety. At the root of it, it's psychological safety, because when team members feel safe to speak up, then the extroverts will come forward. They will share their concerns. They will share their ideas. And this really links back to emotional intelligence. And another word, which is social sensitivity. Because when I have a good amount of emotional intelligence, I will be sensitive towards my team members. And it means that if I'm a big extrovert and I love to speak and I love to come up with ideas, I will now be sensitive and create space for my team members who are more introverted. So this is the beginning of the dynamic that creates a high-performing team. Now you can see why a project management hero who flies in and tells others what to do has difficulties creating a high-performing team where we listen to each other, where the extroverts hold back, the introverts speak up, and we work together, and we have this beautiful dynamic. Yeah, so trust is at the foundation of high-performing teams, not the kind of trust that comes just from working with each other for a long time, but what we might call vulnerability-based trust. And that's exactly what Patrick Lencioni talks about as well. Patrick Lencioni is the author of a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And I've listed the 5 dysfunctions here. The absence of trust is the most fundamental of these dysfunctions. Then fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. But according to Lencioni, it all begins with trust, just like Google said in their research. And you can get the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, but you can also look up the recording of a talk that Patrick Lencioni did in the Royal Albert Hall. So it's a 40-minute conversation, or a 40-minute talk recorded on YouTube from the Royal Albert Hall. So if you Google Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Royal Albert Hall, you'll get this 40-minute talk, and I highly recommend that you watch it in your own time afterwards. It's not only is it very interesting, it is also quite entertaining. So we need to get to trust. We need to build this trust combined with our emotional intelligence. And I want to spend a bit more time giving you specific practical tips on what it means to build trust. So I want you to think right now about a person with whom you would like to build more trust. It could either be a team member, it could be a stakeholder, or it could be that you want somebody to trust you more. Just have a person in mind, right? Because then this will be more specific for you. Okay, there are 4 elements I'm going to go through. The first one is competence. People will trust you more, and you will trust people more the more competent you are. So in this case, you are a project manager. You may have studied the PMP, you may have a certification, you may have some experience running projects. That means that people will hopefully see you as a competent person. Know your numbers, be a capable manager. That's kind of know the ins and outs of project management. Obviously, with the more experience you have, the more people might trust that you can deal with this. So that's also why very young and inexperienced project managers might struggle a bit with this part, because they need to prove themselves before people trust them. But for project managers who have a bit of experience, this is not a problem. This is not the issue of trust. This will come. If you know project management, this will come. The second part of building trust is much more challenging. This is back to the emotional intelligence, building a connection with others, being empathetic with others. So if you want to build more trust with a stakeholder, build a connection with the stakeholder. Make the stakeholder feel that you understand them. One of the biggest gifts you can give a person, is your attention, your full attention, your time to listen to them. So if you're aiming to build trust with somebody, ask questions and just listen to them. What do they worry about? This is a wonderful question to ask your stakeholder. What do they worry about? How would they like you to report issues to them or progress? How would they like you to escalate to them? Ask them and hear what comes back. Great tip for building trust with a stakeholder. See the situation from the other's point of view. Walk in the other person's shoes. That's really how we begin to build trust. Then we have honesty. Real honesty. Now, most project managers probably think of themselves as being honest. You don't walk around lying, but what happens sometimes is that you overpromise. You say, yes, we can deliver this. Yes, we're going to do that by tomorrow. But then if you don't deliver what you say you will deliver, you become unreliable. And in your stakeholders' eyes, it might look like you are unreliable or dishonest. So be honest about risks and issues, make realistic promises, That's a way to build trust, make somebody else trust you. And clear communication is another key element of building trust. In this case, I'm using a stakeholder as an example. If everything is going well on your project, but you're not communicating with your stakeholder, then how can they trust you? They don't know what's going on. So you need to keep them informed. You need to keep them updated regularly. Be honest about risks and issues. Be honest about project progress and be clear. Yeah, that's really the 4 elements that really can help you build trust. And in this case, I used the example of a stakeholder with whom you can build trust. And you can see how these elements link back to emotional intelligence. If we use the team instead, as I said before, you're building a high-performing team. You want to build trust inside of that team. Connect with people. Show empathy towards different team members and encourage your different team members to be sensitive towards each other. You as a team leader, you as a project manager, you can set the example by listening, by asking great questions, by showing trust in others. That will set a good example for your team members to do the same. And you can also encourage people to listen to each other. You can encourage people to be honest. And you can share something from your heart, which is also a bit vulnerable. Because if you share things that maybe difficulties you've had on a project or examples of a mistake you've made once, it also gives your team the opportunity to show that they're not perfect either. You know, we all human. And if you are the superhero project manager who expects your team to be perfect and not make mistakes, I think that's not going to build trust necessarily, because people might be afraid of being judged. So this is an important topic of allowing for some humanity in your team. Maybe we can come back to this during the Q&A if there are more questions. There's a lot to say about this topic. It's very important. Now, perhaps I want to summarize a little bit, and this is not the end of the webinar, but it's good to just, I think, list these 7 habits of empowering project leaders to kind of let you know where we're going with this. We've just talked about creating trust and psychological safety. That's definitely something that everybody should work on. Encourage your team members to find their own answers instead of you feeling that you need to have the answers. Empower through delegation. If you don't feel your team members are ready to be delegated to, then begin slowly by building them up. Help people thrive. Right? You don't want to exhaust people. You want to avoid burnout. So it's very, very important that we help people to really be well and thrive on the project. However, yes, hold people to account. I coach many project managers who have difficulties holding their team members to account. On the one hand, we need to listen, we need to be supportive, absolutely. On the other hand, you need to hold team members to account to what they have promised to do. Once you delegate and you set people up for success and they know what they're committing to, hold them to account. No excuses, right? So that's very strong when you can have the real conversations with people, maybe underperformers, maybe people who always have excuses for why they can't deliver. You need to have those tough conversations. Which brings me to the 6th point here. Talk openly about behaviors and feelings. If a team member isn't delivering, or if there's a behavior which is not okay, you've got to be able to talk about that. You've got to be able to deepen your communication. And I'm going to show you in just a minute how to do that. I'm also going to show you later in this webinar how to use team charters and collaborative planning to shift the burden from you to the entire team. A key element here is to ask more open questions of your team members. And here are some suggestions to questions you can ask. These first sets of questions on the left-hand side, questions you can ask when you are one-on-one with a team member. What's going on for you? What's on your mind? How are you feeling? What do you need in order to deliver? What action will you take? That's part of helping to hold somebody to account. Now, the next set of questions are suggestions to questions you can ask with the entire team in a group setting. These are questions that really challenge people to think differently, challenge people to think beyond. Especially, you'll notice that I have some what-if questions. I would like you to experiment with asking more what-if questions on your own project, because it kind of blows people's minds. What if we had no constraints? What would we do? What if we could start all over? What would we do differently? So I'll really challenge you to ask more questions. And don't try to answer them yourself. Wait and see what comes back from your team members. That's how you begin to empower others. Collaborative planning is another key aspect of shifting away from this hero project manager to a more empowered project leader. Don't feel that you have to do all the planning on your own. Yes, you may be the project manager, you may be responsible for project planning. However, planning collaboratively with your entire team is definitely the way to go. That's what I recommend. There are a few different ways of doing this, depending on whether you are in the same location or whether you are remote. This is an example. Actually, I was running a session at Westminster University. So these are students, these are MSc students in project management. In this case, I was running a training for them on collaborative planning. And I like to use a 7-step process. And this 7-step process, you can download from my website for free. I'll show you in a moment where to get it from. But essentially, if you are in a room together, located in the same building, you get together in a room, you bring a stack of Post-it note, you bring some flip charts, and you begin to brainstorm everything that needs to get done on the project. And then you organize all these different Post-it notes and tasks into some categories. These categories can become work streams in your plan. Then you begin to create a timeline, and together with your entire team, you begin to place the Post-it notes to look at dependencies. And it's actually really fun. And this doesn't create a detailed Microsoft Office plan. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to create one big plan, a high-level plan that everybody buys into. Because if you involve your team members in this planning, it means that they are much more engaged in the project. They have skin in the game, as we like to call it. They are involved. And it also means that this becomes a team building exercise as much as it becomes a planning exercise. Once you have this high-level plan, you can bring it into a digital format. You can recreate it in any electronic planning tool, and you can go deeper with it. But the idea here is to engage all team members in the initial planning stages. If you work online and you cannot get people together in a room, there is still no excuse, because we have many options now with whiteboards that you can share. Miro, M-I-R-O, the Miro tool is one that I like to use. You can create Post-its in there. You can move things around. It is a collaborative whiteboarding tool. And you may be able to recommend many other tools in the chat to each other that you can use. I promised that you could download this from my website for free. I have on my website, susannemadsen.co.uk. You can navigate to the resources page, or you can do /resources. You don't even need to put in your email address or your name. It's just freely available. My resources page has many downloadable templates and guidance like this planning step. So you can download this completely anonymously for free. The other template that I'm going to talk about now that I encourage you to download is the team charter. And by the way, I also have, what is it called? Project definition templates in there and many other things. But the team charter is what I'm going to talk about next, because that is such a fundamental part of going from project management to project leadership, is creating a team charter with your team. And again, you can download this template from my resources page. And first, I want to make sure that you understand the difference between a project charter and a team charter. It is not the same thing. A project charter, you could also call a project definition document, terms of reference. We have many different names for this document. That's where we define what the project needs to deliver, why we're doing the project, who's going to do it, how much it's going to cost, by when we're going to deliver, etc., etc., etc. Fine, you definitely need to do that. That's part of the science of project management, okay? What I'm talking about here is a team charter, which is a lot less common, however, super important. In the team charter, you ask and answer the questions that you see on the right-hand side here. With the team, you sit together with the team, you spend hours, maybe 2 hours at the time, maybe you take half an hour, half a day out to do this together. What is our purpose as a team? Why do we exist? Irrespective of the project we're delivering, maybe, who are we as a team? What is my role? What is your role? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? How are we going to work together? How are we going to communicate? Because one of the characteristics of a high-performing team is that we have a common way of working. You cannot be a high-performing team if everybody works in different directions, work on different goals, and work in different ways. You need a common way of working. You need a common goal. And so the team charter, we can set out how are we going to work together? Not just what tools are we going to use, but how are we going to treat each other? What are our values? Now, we talked about trust before. So your team members might say, oh, trust is one of our values. We want to treat each other with trust in this team. And I would say, very good. But that's not enough. I want to know how we're going to show trust to each other. Because we want to talk about behaviors. How do we want to show up and treat each other? So people might say, okay, we are not going to interrupt each other, or we're going to respect each other's different points of views. That's a behavior that we want to show in our team. So in other words, when you sit down and you talk about the team charter, it's the quality of your conversation that's really important. You're talking about us as a bunch of individuals wanting to come together to collaborate. How are we going to do that? And if you feel unsure how to do this, maybe you can ask a project manager from another team that you know to come and help you to facilitate the session so that you can be part of doing the team charter rather than having to be part of the thinking and running the meeting as well. You can also get external facilitators to help you with this, somebody like me, but of course there will be a charge involved in doing that. And then I want to talk about conversations. I've already mentioned that, of course, emotional intelligence is so important, and we need to deepen our conversation, our communication, and we need to be able to have challenging conversations. So now I will share with you the 4 different levels that we need to communicate at if we want to move from being a project manager to a project leader. And I use the iceberg as an analogy because above the iceberg, it's easy. It's easy to navigate with what we can see. So every project manager is good at talking about what we need to deliver. Yeah, that's the project charter, the planning, risk management, results, tasks, issues, facts, figures. That's probably what we spend, I don't know, 85, 95% of our time talking about on a project. Next level, yeah, we talk about some procedure, how we're going to do it. Maybe as project managers, we spend a fair amount on this too. You know, we're comfortable with this second level too, because it's all about planning, processes, scheduling, timing. Okay, so far so good. But there are two levels more. And the two next levels we are not so comfortable with. One of them is behaviors, and one of this is emotions. The team charter helps you to address both of these levels. Yeah, behavior is about what we expect from each other, what ground rules do we want to work towards. And also, it's also about being able to hold somebody to account. If somebody is not delivering what they say they're going to deliver, their behavior, there's a problem with their behavior, you need to be able to speak to that. It's no good that you only go to the top level content and talk about the task that you haven't delivered. I need to talk about your behavior, right? If somebody is bullying, if somebody is being dismissive, or I don't know, there could be a number of problematic behaviors. Somebody doesn't answer your phone. A stakeholder doesn't review the documents they said they were going to review. You've got to be able to talk about behavior, and you've got to be able to talk about emotions, either your emotions or the emotions that you pick up amongst your team members or stakeholders. And I'm going to give you some examples now, because this can perhaps be a bit abstract. So I have two examples. The first example is from a kickoff meeting. How can you make sure during a kickoff meeting that you touch all of these 4 levels of communication? This is my example. First level, you say, okay, it's exciting that we finally get to start this project, blah, 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 blah. We've talked about deliverables. Now I'd like to explain the benefits and why this is such an important initiative for our firm. Good, content, fine. Next one is a little bit more about planning. Which collaboration tools would you like us to use? Who will make sure we get the communication platform up and running? So this is about procedure. Now, an example of behavior. I would like all of you to write down one ground rule for how you would like us to work together on this project. This is at a kickoff meeting. So we're beginning to talk about what we expect from each other in terms of behavior. And lastly, how do you all feel about this project? Is there anything else we need to consider to make you fully motivated? Remember, this is just an example. I want to give you one more example. Perhaps for how you could communicate with a stakeholder at all 4 levels to make sure that you don't just stay at the top level. Top level should be easy. Thank you for taking the time to meet and talk about the project and explain and let me explain what the main requirements are to date. I'd love your feedback on whether you think we missed anything out. Okay, easy. Next level should be relatively easy too. I'd like to discuss the governance of the project and your specific role. Given your expertise, we would like you to sit on the steering committee. Is that okay? All right, so it's not too personal, is it? But now let's get to behavior. Can we agree? Sorry, I can't actually see all of my slide because of all my controls here. Just have to move it. Can we agree that if you come across any issues, you will raise them with me first? Then we can find a way to resolve it between us. So this is an example of how you're being proactive ahead of time by anticipating a behavior or by setting an expectation with a stakeholder. Setting expectations is about behavior. And lastly, emotions. I get the sense that you're worried about the level of input we require from you. Is that right? So this is a way for me to share with you examples for how you can reach all 4 levels of communication. And I want to summarize and conclude in this way. Project leadership is not about stepping forward and exhausting yourself as you showcase how much you know and how much you can do. Leadership is knowing how to step back in order to create the space that supports others and empowers the team to perform at their best. And here we have some of the summary. Drop the superhero image. Instead, ask more questions, create a safe environment, deepen your communication, involve the team, develop your emotional intelligence, and you can involve the team by using collaborative planning, the team charter, the way I used it, the way I showed it. Ask more open questions that begin with what, how, what if, delegate more. And begin to notice how you feel, begin to pay attention to people. That's how you develop your emotional intelligence. And then this provocative 7-step, do the inner work. I haven't talked about the inner work. And the inner work is really beginning to notice your own narrative. If you lack confidence, if you overwork yourself, if you have some patterns that are unhelpful and unhealthy, you need to do the inner work to understand what's at the root of your behaviors yourself, so that you can begin to lead more effectively, so that you can begin to set better boundaries, and so you can begin to have a more healthy work-life balance and feel that you are worthy. Many project managers lack self-confidence, and it's not a good feeling. So this book is also exists as an audiobook. I recorded it with my own voice. It's available on Audible and Spotify. And my very last slide is an encouragement to stay in touch with me. Yes, you can get my books on Amazon and all places where books are available. I also encourage you to link up with me, LinkedIn. I have many, many videos on YouTube. I have the resources on my resources page. So there are many ways in which you can reach me. And right now, of course, I'm a coach. So you can also be coached by me personally. I run leadership programs. So if you work for a corporation, I run both in-person and online leadership training. And actually, I may have met some of you in person. I spoke at the Dubai International Project Management Conference last year and also 5 years ago. It's a brilliant conference in your region. For those of you, obviously, who are from that region, if you haven't attended it, I highly recommend it. And with that, I really encourage your questions.
Thank you, Susanne. Thank you for sharing a wonderful knowledge on this topic. So we'll start taking questions. There's a question from David. Uh, I think this question is very nice. Being an empowering leader in some organization will make you lose your job. As a top management won't understand that you are a leader because they want the result. They'll consider that you delegate to get rid of your task and will simply take someone of your subordinate with less salary to be in your position. So how can you address that?
Right. So a good question. Now, leadership is not about delegating everything. That's misunderstood. So I'm glad you asked that question. There are some things that we cannot delegate. There's something I call smart delegation. Smart delegation or elegant delegation is when you delegate something to a team member that will make that team member grow and that they can perhaps generally do better than you. Things you should never delegate yourself is people leadership, stakeholder management, and conflict. You can never delegate. You go and speak to that stakeholder. You sort it out. I think there are some topics that definitely rest with you as a project manager. Strategic thinking. Yes, you can do it with your team. And remember, your role is to empower the team. So when you can delegate some of the less complex tasks, perhaps, that others want to do, it frees you up to manage stakeholders, to look at the business case. So senior leadership should be happy because you think with them, you think strategically, you communicate better. So I hope that's answering the question, or at least beginning to answer the question. Otherwise, feel free to ask again and we can go into more depth.
I hope this has a question being asked by David. So we take another question from Srijit. If the client is asking the complete an activity with an unrealistic time frame, it happens with a lot of people, and we respond that it is not possible to complete. However, the client is not satisfied with the response, and we would be forced to agree to the same. However, it won't be complete, and all issues to the PM. Basically, it will create an issue. So what would be our response to this scenario?
Yeah, you know what? It is very difficult. I coach many project managers who run very complex technical projects, and the deadline is set, and they are being kind of forced, kind of to commit to that deadline, because if they don't commit to the deadline, the client is going to go elsewhere. That happens. Now, I think there's a number of things we can do. We can, as a project manager, give different scenarios to management. We can say, our ideal deadline is a month later, 2 months later, whatever it is. With that, we get all the requirements. With that, we get the high quality. That's what we recommend. That's what we can do feasibly. With the deadline that we are being asked to do now, to meet that deadline, we are going to have to cut quality. And that means higher risk. And somebody needs to sign off that that's the case. Unfortunately, we cannot have fast delivery and high quality. They don't really go together very well. So I think it's about creating a dialogue. And if senior management says, yep, okay, we sign off on that higher risk approach, I guess it's their choice, but I would have that conversation. And the other thing that you can do, of course, is to set your conditions, to say the only way we can meet this more aggressive deadline is if we get this and that expert involved. If we get this and that expert involved, or if we outsource this piece, we can do it. So I think scenario planning and making clear that there are risks involved is probably the best you can do, because you don't want to end up being blamed for messing it up.
That's correct. So we have one question from Mohammed Zubair. It's about using emotional intelligence. So his question is, while developing team charter, how can we use AI, like emotional intelligence, especially when the team is virtually located?
Okay, so when your team is virtually located and you want to take some time out to do the team charter, I would say don't do too long at the time, because you don't want to do half a day sitting online. Maybe you want to do 90-minute sessions. And I would perhaps start by asking everybody, tell me a time when you have been in a project, in a team that you really enjoyed. So a bit of storytelling, and what made you really enjoy that team? Because then you tap into that emotional side of, oh, once I worked for a team, and we had great trust because, for whatever reason, or every Friday we did so and so, or we had fun because blah, blah, blah. So people share their personal stories, and you can maybe learn from that, and you create the right atmosphere. That could be one way of kicking it off. So I would say have some personal stories that people share. That's a very good start.
Thank you for sharing your experience. There's a question from Jaffer. So the question is, emotional intelligence is hard to practice. So what could be the action plan for this? Can you advise something?
Yeah. So first of all, go and watch my webinar on emotional intelligence. I think I have several of them. Another one. This book is all about practicing your emotional intelligence, because it's about doing the inner work, and emotional intelligence is inner work. Other than that, I'll give you some specifics. You can work with a coach. You can ask for feedback, because when you ask for feedback, you are also becoming aware of blind spots that you may have. And emotional intelligence is also about awareness, beginning to notice what you haven't noticed before. So you can ask for feedback. You can also, and this goes for all of you, I hope that you all have a really good buddy at work, somebody who is a good colleague, somebody who attends some meetings with you. You can agree with that person that they sometimes give you a few tips, kind, not too harsh, not too, aggressive. Just sometimes they can give you a few gentle suggestions to what you can do differently on the interaction part. Maybe they'll say, oh, you interrupted somebody in a meeting, just be aware. Or maybe they'll say, I think you could have summarized better in this meeting. So they help you to practice some of these softer aspects, some of these power skills. That could be a good way to practice your emotional intelligence with somebody at work. There are other ways too. Let me think for a moment. What else? You can journal. Every day you can take notes. Every week you can take some notes. What did I do well this week in the interaction part? Where did I listen well? What good questions did I ask? So emotional intelligence comes with that awareness. So if you begin to pause and observe yourself, not be too critical, don't criticize yourself, just be curious about yourself. That's the way to begin to notice. And when you notice, little by little, you will begin to make changes.
Thank you for sharing your feedback on this question. So there's one question, like it happens with me also. So when is the correct time to be a leader, and when would it be to be a manager? Because see, every time you can't be a leader, you have to become a manager. Or yeah, because if you have a team, you can't be nice to everyone every time. So what's your feedback? I mean, what's your advice on this?
Leaders don't have to be nice to everybody, first of all. Leaders need to be empathetic and supporting and challenging. So I talk about the yin and yang of leadership. I didn't talk about that in this webinar, but I have a section in the book about that. How the most effective leaders challenge and support at the same time. Okay, but your question was, what's a good time to be a leader versus a manager? I think it's true that most of us enter the profession. We need to understand the basics. We need to understand that gray part that McKinsey talked about, the science of management. We need to understand risk management. We need to understand planning. We need to understand processes. But at the same time, I think we can begin to notice team interactions. So I think straight away we can begin to be leaders. It takes a little longer, I think, to learn leadership, definitely, but there's not a time. But Ankur, you said this happened to you also, so maybe you can clarify from your point of view, if you're happy.
See, I'm telling you because being into this a kind of practical world, for empathy is fine, but not all the times you can have empathy for other people, right? Because somebody you are answerable to someone. So when you are answerable to someone, then you have to get the work done. So because of the delay from other person, then see it's a chain. I hope you can understand, right?
So
Yeah.
we
So
need,
that's why
yeah, go on.
I think that's why I've learned a lot of things from this session. So I'll try to implement the same things in my profession as well, so
Mm,
that we can have, like, we can work as a team as we.
exactly.
It's about not centralization, it's about decentralization.
Exactly. And this doesn't happen overnight. This is not easy. Actually, it's not easy. It takes time, it takes years to really perfect it. And even good leaders, they can still be better, because what you're touching on here is really the fine detail, and it's so crucial. How do we have these challenging conversations? In the coaching I do, in the leadership training, it's all about these challenging conversations. A team member doesn't deliver. How do I do that? I empathize. Okay, I understand. I also want to hold him to account. The third level of communication behaviors, we need to have a tough conversation. I can still be polite, but I
True.
want to understand what I want to understand how we can make sure that this doesn't happen again. I want to understand how I can support you better to make sure you deliver next time. I really want to understand why you're not delivering again and again. So
That,
we need to talk about this pattern of behavior. So leaders can empathize and be tough at the same time. That's
that's
the
true.
art. That's the art of leadership. It's not science, it is the art.
We need to learn. I think whosoever is not implementing, they need to learn and implement.
Yeah.
So it's like becoming a tough person along with the empathy. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the leadership programs I run, we use actors to practice behavior. So the actor would be that team member. Oh, no, I haven't done it. Okay, next week. I haven't done it. I haven't done it. And the project manager who's on the training needs to have the conversation with this actor who plays the team member. So we practice behaviors. And we do it again because it's not easy to practice, but we need to learn.
Agree with you. So we'll take a last question, although this is a session where we have 28 questions from the attendees, and there are around 250 people who had joined the session today. So this is the last question, and we'll be sending you the questions. So if you can reply to this question, then we can send an email to the attendees for their questions because we have short of time. So the last question is many times the stakeholder, this is from Abdul, many times the stakeholder misunderstood the project management process as an extra effort and the cost on the project. How do you justify them having the PM is not an extra effort or cost, but a better management?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of explaining what project management does. And my God, it's been a long time since I've had that challenge because mostly people now understand project management. I would say uh, project management is about predicting the unpredictable. It is actually about trying to control something that is uncontrollable. We can never fully predict the unpredictable, of course, especially now with more complexity, but we can, it's about beginning to anticipate. And I would give risk management as an example, probably, because I would still say with great risk management, you can manage an entire project. So give your stakeholder a situation where there's no project management, no risk management. So boof, there's an issue and the project stops, or we didn't foresee this technical issue, or we didn't foresee whatever would happen. But with project management, we go through a risk management exercise. We do a plan for how to mitigate these potential issues, and that in itself should be the whole reason for having project management. Risk management in itself, I think, is gonna convince
We
people.
have shared a lot of questions, but whosoever asked the questions, we have short of time and we'll surely reply through email. We'll just ask Suzanne for the reply on those questions, and at the team will share. So, Susan, thank you for sharing a wonderful information. I think I have learned also from this session, and many of people like me have learned, and they will be implementing the same in the throughout life, the journey. So we discussed, like we started with the why do we struggle. So there was a question like why it's a 40% regarding the fail. So there was a question we'll reply to them person later. Then we discussed about the McKinsey and company like important things required leadership, collaboration, mindset, ownership, and coaching. You discussed about the same. However, we only focus on the PM things uh, like planning and all. So it's good. So we can use this in our daily work style. Then we have like a management versus leadership. So I think me more into a management rather than a leadership. So I should move to that other end also. Then you discuss about how to build your IQ. Like notice how you feel and
EQ.
coming from to EQ, yeah, and coming from you to we, right? So we also discussed about three common mistakes what we make. The advantages of pay settings, like heroic leadership. There was a question for this: if we have this leadership, we are gone. So and plus we discussed about disempowering for the team, like disadvantage and advantage. And when we drop the superhero mentality, what happens? And you gave a very nice example like rich mindset, poor mindset. Same way, empowering leader and a hero project manager. It was a very nice description about the same. So plus you took it through some examples also, and the 7 habits of empowering project leaders. Thank you for sharing information on that too. So we thank you for sharing a wonderful knowledge with us, which will help us in enhancing our skills and knowledge throughout our journey. You have a channel also. If anybody want to see the videos, this is youtube.com/, Susan Madsen. So you can go on YouTube and can watch the videos. So then one question, if somebody wants to buy a book or is there any freebie available? There was a question. So they can check.
The book is available on Amazon. All books are available on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon.
And
Okay. So if
and
somebody
and
wants to
this one is audiobook on Audible as well, or Spotify.
okay, so anybody wants to go through the book and or listen to the book, they can go to Audible or Amazon. So I know we wouldn't be here without the dedication of our team. And thanks for our marketing, for promoting marketing team, for promoting the webinars on the website and social media. A special thanks to our volunteers as mentioned in the beginning, that we are totally based on our volunteers, from membership, outreach, volunteering, and finance team for their invaluable support in making this event possible. Finally, a big thanks to you, Amir and Joyce, for the contribution behind the scenes. We hope that we have learned a lot from these sessions and more sessions to go like this. We look forward to see you in our next upcoming webinars. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.